He could have married again. He had the money, the looks, the stories, the stability. Women still looked at him. Some even waited for him. But he chose something else. Silence over sacrifice. Peace over pressure. Freedom over fighting for affection he'd already earned. And when his friends asked, "Why are you still single?" he smiled and said nothing. Because how do you explain to someone who's never lost himself that staying single was how he finally found peace? Today, we're not talking about loneliness. We're talking about liberation. Why men in their 50s, their 60s, and even their 70s are choosing stillness over stress, purpose over partnership, and how that quiet decision has become the most powerful choice of their lives. This isn't bitterness. It's wisdom. Let's talk about it. It didn't happen in a single moment. There was no dramatic breakup, no final argument, no grand declaration of, "I'm done with women." It came quietly, in the middle of a Tuesday, after a long drive home in silence, after yet another conversation where he said everything right and still felt unseen. He was in his late 40s when it hit him. The chase was over, not because he stopped wanting a connection, but because he was tired of losing himself just to earn it. He remembered all the years he spent performing, trying to be interesting enough to hold her attention, strong enough to earn her respect, soft enough to avoid triggering her wounds, successful enough to feel worthy, and still never enough. He remembered the way love used to feel like a job interview and marriage, like a contract he couldn't renegotiate. And one day, sitting alone on the edge of his bed, still in his dress shirt, shoes barely off, he whispered to himself, "I just want peace. Not passion, not butterflies, not a soulmate. Peace." That single word became his compass. It was the first time in years he didn't feel like he had to earn someone's approval to feel valuable. He didn't hate women. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't broken. He was just done chasing. He deleted the apps. He stopped putting himself out there. He started investing in someone else himself. He picked up old hobbies, woodworking, fishing, and reading military history. He repaired things that didn't make money but brought quiet satisfaction: a leaky faucet, a squeaky door, a broken guitar string. He learned how to cook steak exactly the way he liked it. He turned down dinner dates that felt like interviews. He stopped explaining why he was alone. And for the first time, he didn't feel alone at all. Because for the first time, he wasn't performing. He was just being. And that shift from trying to be chosen to choosing himself was the beginning of a whole new chapter. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It wasn't rebellious. It was wise. It was the moment he realized he didn't need to be someone's everything. He just needed to stop giving his everything to someone who didn't even know what to do with it. People look at him now calm, composed, solitary, and assume he just prefers to be alone. But what they don't see is the weight he carries behind that peace. They don't see what he's lived through to earn it. Because before he chose solitude, he lived through chaos. He saw what love can turn into, not in fairy tales, but in real life. He watched friends get torn apart in courtrooms. Men who once stood proudly beside the woman they loved, now reduced to weekends with their kids, and warnings not to speak too loudly around lawyers. He watched men lose houses, pensions, and reputations, not because they failed as partners, but because they didn't see the storm coming, and by the time they did, it was too late. And he wasn't immune to it either. He remembered how it felt the first time a woman he loved said, "I'm not happy," without offering a path forward, just a verdict. He remembered spending holidays in a half-empty apartment, wondering how something so beautiful became so hollow. He remembered compromising again and again his time, his values, even his voice, until one day, he no longer recognized himself in the mirror. He'd been a provider, a protector, a loyal man, but none of it stopped the unraveling. He saw what happened to men who ignored the signs, who tried to fix a relationship by giving more of themselves until there was nothing left to give. He saw men punished not for being bad, but for being unaware. And so, he became aware. Aware of how quickly love can turn into leverage, how vulnerability can be weaponized, how silence from a man is seen as strength, until it's used against him in therapy sessions or divorce court. He's seen what happens when a man gives everything and still loses. And that kind of wisdom doesn't make you bitter. It makes you quiet. It makes you question. Is the risk worth the reward? Is the connection worth the collapse? And unless the answer is a resounding yes, he's not signing up for another roller coaster ride disguised as romance. Not anymore. Because he knows something younger men haven't lived long enough to learn. It's not the leaving that hurts most. It's the parts of yourself you leave behind, just trying to make it work. He never used to notice the sound of birds in the morning, or how the steam from a fresh cup of coffee curled toward the sunlight. He never used to pause between tasks, not really. There was always someone to respond to, something to fix, something to chase. But now there's space. And in that space, he's discovered a peace no relationship ever offered him. It's not about being against love. It's about finally understanding what it means to live without tension. He wakes up when his body tells him to, not when someone nudges him with a list of things that need doing. He eats what he wants, when he wants, and the kitchen stays just the way he left it. There's no second-guessing his words, no deciphering moods, no walking on eggshells around someone who just had a long day. If he wants to spend 2 hours organizing the garage, he does it. If he wants to watch old war documentaries until midnight, there's no argument. His world is small and sacred. A log cabin in the woods? Maybe. Or maybe just a condo with a view and good books stacked everywhere. There's a dog by his feet, not because he's lonely, but because he finally gets to care for something without emotional politics. His phone rings less, and that's a blessing. His friendships are deeper, not built around gossip or obligation, but shared silence and respect, the kind of companionship where no one needs to fix or impress the other. This peace? It's not the absence of people. It's the absence of performance. It's the absence of emotional taxation, of guilted apologies, of constantly explaining himself to someone who never truly tried to understand. Some people say that's lonely, but he knows better, because he's been lonely in a crowded home. He's felt misunderstood, lying next to someone who swore they loved him. So now, when people ask, "Don't you miss having someone?" he smiles gently and replies, "I don't miss having someone. I missed having myself. And now, I'm finally here." People love to label him. They say he's closed off, afraid of intimacy, stuck in his ways. But the truth is, he's not running from love. He's just not running toward it blindly anymore. There's a difference between avoiding and protecting. You avoid what you fear. You protect what you value. And after years of giving his time, his attention, his care to women who didn't know how to receive it, he values his energy more than ever. He knows how much it costs to truly show up in a relationship. The patience it takes, the self-awareness, the emotional labor, the resilience when things get hard. He's not unwilling to offer that again, but only if it's mutual. Only if she knows how to handle stillness, not just stimulation. Only if she speaks the language of accountability, not blame. Only if she brings peace to the table, not just presence. See, when he was younger, he poured from a full cup into someone else's hands, hoping they'd take care of it. Now, he guards that cup like it's sacred, not because he's bitter, but because he's learned. He's learned that not every pretty smile holds depth, that not every romantic spark leads to partnership. That chemistry without character just burns out faster. He's seen how quickly a relationship can become a transaction, how "I love you" turns into "I deserve more from you." How little things become arguments not because they matter, but because neither person knows how to stay grounded. So now, before he even considers letting someone in, he asks himself, does she move with grace or urgency? Does she listen to understand or just to respond? Can she sit in silence, or does she always need noise? If she can't honor peace, she can't enter it, because his life is no longer built on proving he's enough. It's built on preserving what's already whole. So no, he's not avoiding love. He's just refusing to lose himself again for it. And that is a kind of wisdom younger men are too busy chasing to understand. He doesn't need a woman to complete him. That fantasy died years ago, somewhere between his first heartbreak and his last sleepless night next to someone who didn't see him. He's whole now. Not perfect, but whole. So if she comes whenever she comes, she won't be walking into a man waiting to be rescued or rebuilt. She'll be meeting a man with his own rhythm, his own peace, his own life. And she'll have to know his language, not just speak it, but live it. She must understand that silence isn't rejection, it's reflection. That a slow reply isn't disinterest, it's discernment. That when he says no, He's not being difficult, he's protecting what took him decades to build. He won't chase. He won't perform. He won't shrink to keep the peace. Because the peace he has now, it's not negotiable. If she comes, she must bring more than charm. She must bring calm. She must know how to sit beside a man without needing constant validation. She must have her own stillness, her own depth, her own fire that doesn't burn others, but warms the room. She must know how to honor the quiet without fearing it. Because he's not building a castle anymore, he's living in one. Not one made of gold or ego, but of boundaries, hard-won lessons, and the kind of clarity that only comes after being broken and rebuilt by life, not by love. She doesn't have to be perfect, but she must be real. Because at this stage in his life, the only thing he's still willing to risk is his time. And that's the one thing he's learned to never spend on someone who doesn't already value it. So yes, he's still open, but only to a woman who knows. Love isn't built on attention. It's built on alignment. And if she speaks that language, she won't have to knock twice. He's not angry. He's not broken. He's not waiting for someone to knock on his door and make life feel whole again. Because the truth is, he's already done that work himself. What he lost in past relationships, the time, the trust, the illusion he gained back in the form of quiet mornings, steady breathing, and a life that finally feels like his own. So if you're watching this and you're one of those men, one of the ones who chose peace over pressure, stillness over struggle, solitude over survival, you're not weird, you're not jaded, you're not falling behind. You've just seen enough to know better, and there's wisdom in that. A quiet kind of power the world may never applaud, but other men will recognize the moment they hear it in your voice. You're not alone. There are more of us than they think. Men who no longer chase love to feel valuable, but wait to be seen by someone who already knows we are. If this message speaks to you, drop a quiet, "I chose peace," in the comments. No pressure, just a space for men who've lived long enough to know some silence isn't empty. It's earned. Subscribe to Smart Golden Advice for more content like this, built for the man you are now, not the boy you used to be.